The thing about watercolor, it's a lot of fun. It does half the work for you. The materials are so dynamic that you don't really have to do much. You just got to chase it a bit. And once you have fun and you start enjoying how your brush hits the paper and how the water and the pigment mixes together, you can really explore. And another nice thing, there's not much of a cleanup. It's very inexpensive. You can leave your colors in the tray. I often start with just whatever colors I happen to have in the tray. And today we're going to be painting some hummingbirds because people have asked me how to do the hummingbirds. What I do when I'm starting out with the hummingbirds is I'll start with the beak, and then I'll do the eye, and I'll put a little highlight on the tip of the eye, and then I shape the eyelid, the shape of the outside of the eye. It's a dark color. It has to dry. I don't want it to be wet. So I do this part first because it has to be very precise. And then after that, I make up the rest of the bird just for fun. So often when I'm doing the beaks, I'll do one in one direction. I'll do another beak in another direction. I'll do another beak in another direction, another beak in another direction. And I have them going in all these different random directions so that I never get set in a preconditioned way of realizing the birds afterward. So it's kind of random. All right, anyway, let's see what we do when we start painting now. So I start by just angling the beak, and I want to make the beak in one movement. And I start with a little tip. There's a little curve, and then it goes solid. But it's more about just the focus. Trying to get precise on the brush. So I always start by doing, I don't know, about a dozen beaks. And this is the part that requires precision. So there we go. And now I'll do the eye. Sometimes I'll get that whole thing in just one movement, which is really nice, which is sort of like where I try to go. And now on this part, I'm going to just use the very tip of the brush. I'm trying to make a perfect circle, which is always hard to make a perfect circle. And then I leave a tiny little bit of white, like a highlight, like that. And then I'll draw a little line around the outside of the eye. And that's where you're practicing your brush control. So this one's not perfect, you see? It's not perfect. So you can never make them perfect. Or you can, but it's always it's a matter of averages. Because the paint goes a certain way. Like this, I would like to make it more round. But I'll muck it up if I do too much. What we're going to do now is we're going to do the body, and I like to do two tones. So what I'm going to do is dip the paint in one solid color, and then I'm going to dip just the tip in another color, so that as I make the bird, it's going to come across. So this time we're going to use yellow and red. So I tip just a little bit of red right on the edge. And then when we go like this, I start with the brush really flat. Whoops. That. So there's two colors in there, and then it's in the dynamic of the brush as I pull it out. So I'll add just another little tip of red. And then we do some tails here. So that's the start. A white tipped in blue. Okay, so we do a white tipped in blue. And with these, it's very much about the dynamic of the wing. So I've got to move this brush the right way. There we go. A little bit of clear with some white. It can have blue in it. I'm going to get a little bit of the gray coming from the beak. And I'm going to get a little bit of the gray coming from the beak. We don't want to do this too early because if the paint isn't dry, it's just going to make a mess around the eye. So it's got to be dry enough that it's not interfering with the overall design, but it's still going to pull some of the pigment in. It's kind of like Etch-a-Sketch in the old days when you tip the thing all over the place. And I don't want to. There we go. That's going to dry very different than what it looks like here. Most of what I do here is very inexpensive. The main thing that's important is you have a good brush. The brush is what hits the paper. So if you're going to spend some money on something, spend it on the brush. Paints, you know, whatever. You could probably use coffee and make something decent. The paper is also pretty good. You're going to get a sharper line around your water when you're using a lighter weight paper. So the heavier weight your paper, the less of a circumference line or outline you get, like a watermark on your drawing. Another thing to really do is make your watercolors a byproduct of your enjoyment. Don't try and make a specific painting. Really enjoy the process of watercolor and let the results just go where they may. And by doing a whole bunch of it, by being prolific, you end up getting more and more in tune with your brush. And your brush has to be a bit like a dance. It's constantly dynamic, so the movement of the brush is very important.